Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted more genuine, fulfilling life, then do we have the show for you. Today I'll be talking with Sandra Joseph, the record-holding Phantom of the Opera's longest leading lady and the author of a phenomenal new book on living your life, Unmasking What Matters. And that's just what I want to talk with her about 10 key life lessons from 10 years on Broadway to unmask what matters most and step into your field of power. That, plus we'll talk about broken carts and walking on water, $3 a day and pizza and bagels, white roses and Glen Close, soft pajamas and fluffy socks, brown caprices and red Ferraris, the importance of Sinatra and Brando, Michael Hartig and One Last Chance, and what on earth a 4-year-old and a yellow Crayola has to do with anything. Gotcha. So welcome to the show, Sandra. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to shine with you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and a mighty woohoo for being on the show. I was debating what question to start with, and even at the last moment, I'm not so sure. So I guess I've got to go with a commonality. As a 17-year-old, I bought from my grandma Green Gertrude, this ancient green Delta 88, a very close relative to the brown Caprice.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes. My grandfather had a brown Caprice Classic,
Yes,
which I inherited, and that was the first car that I drove around Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which is where I went to school. But my home was actually in Harper Woods, a lovely suburb of Detroit, but it was known as the ghetto of Grosse Pointe by certain people who lived in mansions on the lake. So that brown Caprice was sort of a symbol for my driving around next to my friends who had DeLoreans and Jaguars and Mercedes and feeling from the start like I wasn't measuring up.
So if we go back in time then, speaking about measuring up, and we go back to your earliest days, being on stage and a dream about being out there in front of others, that wasn't in the picture, was it?
No, I fell in love with singing and musical theater at a very young age. When I was about 8 years old, my family went to see the national tour of the musical Annie that came through Detroit, and I fell in love, as so many young girls did, with that character and that show. And it was one of those full-bodied experiences of knowing that's what I want to do. That's what I'm supposed to do. I just felt it so deeply when I saw the show that night as an 8-year-old. But at the same time, I felt immediately like there's no way I will ever be able to do that. I was a shy kid, terrified of strangers, hiding behind my mom. And I never wanted any part of being in the spotlight. I didn't like people looking at me. So to stand out on stage with spotlights on me and all kinds of eyes on me was the most horrifying thing I could imagine. And yet I loved this art form from a very young age. So the battle was on for me from the start. And I think so many people can relate to that sense, even as adults, of knowing there's something, just feeling somewhere inside of you that there's something you want so badly to do, or that is meant for you to do or create. And on the heels of that comes the sense that that's ridiculous, that's impossible, that is way beyond anything that I could ever do. And I hope that what people recognize from my journey is if you keep following that intuitive guidance, we really are capable of far more than we might think.
Woohoo! It's interesting because in your earliest days, you got into a performance in 5th grade. This could have been, should have been. No, this was not meant to be your shining moment, but it would be a guiding light. What happened for you that night?
Yes. I got my courage up and auditioned for a solo in the 5th grade Christmas concert.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a few lines of a song. And I had a very sweet music teacher in the 5th grade, Mrs. Maters, and she kind of made me feel safe enough to sing alone in front of her. And she gave me this solo. So the night of the concert arrives, and I'm lined up outside the gym
Mm-hmm.
with all my classmates. We're about to go in and take our places on the risers. And I happened to look inside the gym doors, and I saw the crowd. And it was just like, I can still see it in my mind's eye, this blur of colors. And I remember hearing all this noise of voices and chatter and chairs, folding chairs rattling around. And this sea of chaos and what felt to me like nothing but the potential for failure and humiliation. And I made a beeline for Mrs. Maters.
Mm-hmm.
And right before the concert, I said, I can't do it. And I begged her to get someone else to sing that solo because I just could not walk out there to the microphone in front of all of those people and sing by myself. So I stood back there on the risers, and when the moment for my solo came, I watched a friend of mine, my classmate, walk down to that microphone and sing those 3 lines that I had practiced again and again in my room. And I remember the feeling of just biting my lip and holding back tears and feeling so disappointed in myself and so crushed that I gave up. Even though in that moment of terror, I thought I was choosing the safe route.
Mm-hmm.
But when I chickened out of it, I really understood in a visceral way that there's also a cost to saying no to ourselves. There's a huge cost to trying to stay invisible and repressing what we know is inside of us. Now, I knew early on that I loved singing. I didn't know whether or not I was any good at it, but I knew I loved it and wanted to do it. And so I really do have the sense that something clicked at that young age, and I recognized the cost of saying no and letting the fear win. And I think on some level that has guided me ever since, because I still feel fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I ever overcame it. It's that I learned how to say yes, even though my heart was pounding, how to keep my feet moving, even when everything inside me said, this is dangerous, turn and run the other direction. I continually say yes, even when I'm afraid. And that has made a huge difference in my life.
Well, it's fascinating because, and I want to go back to your story of growing up, but throughout your time on Phantom of the Opera, and you had a record-holding run, you were continuously looking at the fire escape.
Yes. I stood in my dressing room before every show, and when that music would start, bum, 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 and the chandelier is rising out over the audience, I was still in my dressing room at that point, which is on the 2nd floor of the Majestic Theater. And that was my cue. That music was my cue to head down the stairs to my left and get ready to make my first entrance. Mm-hmm. But the set of stairs to my right, the fire escape stairs, often beckoned at that moment. I would think, oh gosh, I could just disappear into the crowd in Times Square and no one would ever know. I could just slip out the back and not have to go out there by myself, knowing anything can happen. It's live. I'm in front of 1,500 people who've spent a lot of money to be there. And what if I don't measure up? Those old voices. Wherever you go, there you are, as John Kabat-Zinn titled his book. And those old voices were still with me throughout that entire journey.
So how did you did get a lead role at 16. Oh, actually, you made a vow. What was the vow you made after that 5th grade night?
Yeah, the vow, the promise to myself was that no matter how afraid I felt, I would choose courage. I would choose to put love in the driver's seat and not let fear hold me back. So I think so often we proceed sort of with one foot on the brake, and we know there's something we want to do, and we're sort of inching forward, but we're not really able to commit because that fear is keeping us somehow stuck. And I promised myself that if opportunities came my way, even if they felt too big for me, I would say yes, even if I was terrified. So I did get my first leading role in high school. It was a long time after I first saw Annie, and a long time after chickening out of that solo in the 5th grade. I was 16 when I did my first leading role in a musical. And as it turned out, it was Annie. I got to play the lead in my high school production at Grosse Pointe North High School. And I loved it. It was the most fun I'd ever had. It was scary every time. But once I had that first performance under my belt, I felt the empowerment, that rush that you feel of, oh, I did it. My friend Steve Farber, who's an author and speaker on leadership, he talks about how leaders, if you aren't stepping into those scary moments, you can't really call yourself a leader. He says you're a poser. Because if we're growing, if we're continuing to blossom, we're always stepping up to that threshold of the unknown. Steve calls it the OSM, which is his acronym for the oh shoot. You can substitute your word there. Oh shoot moment. Like when you're going up on the roller coaster and you're feeling that, whoa, that terror. And then once that ride is done, it's so exhilarating to say, I did it. So that's what it felt like for me when I faced that fear and I got out there in front of people and I did that thing that I loved.
Woohoo! I think we sometimes confuse the OSM for something we shouldn't, and I hate that word, but we're going to use it here in quotes, we shouldn't do for something we really get to do or would be great to do. We confuse that fear with something we get to run away from for the exhilaration and excitement that's on the other side if we would only step forward into our true selves.
That's it. And I think it's an important distinction to make. I often ask myself, like when I'm feeling a sense of no, like this feels like a no to me, if there's an opportunity, I've gotten pretty good at discerning the difference between, it's like, imagine standing on a high dive, on a diving board on a hot day, and you feel a sense of fear, but you're looking below and the water is blue and beautiful and cooling, and you want to jump in, but there's, that trepidation. Versus if you're standing on the top of that diving board and you're looking down and the water is filled with sewage and muck. That's the distinction to me. It's like, it's a yes to me if I feel a sense of excitement and fear, because physiologically they are the same in our physiology. So if I'm feeling a sense of nervous excitement, then it's a yes. But if there's some kind of like, I'm getting a vibe here for this that feels really off, something is not right, that sense of revulsion in some way, then I feel, oh, I'm being protected here. And this really is a clear no for me. I'm not saying no out of fear. This is my intuition guiding me to say, this isn't the right opportunity for me. I think that's a really important distinction to make.
It's huge, and it implies something we talked about briefly off air beforehand. Presence. You were fully checking in with yourself on the board and saying, what is this that's really going on?
Yes. And I think that is something we can all tap into at any moment. And it's a continual practice of checking in and listening inwardly. And I've had to do it with every decision I've made. The decision to move to New York and pursue theater professionally, the decision to leave Broadway and start on this second chapter, the decision to write this book. And the book took me about a decade. And for a long time, there were, it had false starts. Not false, but it had its early versions that didn't quite feel right. And I kept pulling the plug on it because I felt somehow this isn't what I'm most passionate about sharing yet. So I do think listening inwardly and following that guidance that we hear, following really what feels like love instead of fear. I think it really comes down to that classic age-old choice between love and fear.
Well, it's that very powerful question. I'm not sure if it first came from Courses in Miracles, but what would love do?
Yes, that's it. And I think we can always trust that question.
You said a powerful word a few minutes ago, another powerful word a few minutes ago, which has had a big theme in your life, which is commit. Just like you committed to saying after college, I'm going to go and give this a go. 5 years, I am committing to it.
Yes. And, I'm so fortunate to have had parents who supported that choice. I know many people who had dreams that were similar to mine. Those dreams were squashed by an outside voice. And I think we can always reclaim that part of ourselves that wants to express, just because I pursued it professionally, you don't have to do it to earn your living in order to still do those things that light you up. But for me, my dad actually suggested going to New York and giving myself 5 years to give it my best shot so that I would at least know I had tried. And so that was the commitment that I made to myself. I'm going to give it my all for this finite period of time. And if nothing comes of it, I can always go back home and figure out plan B. So I did commit to that 5 years and went to New York and faced all the rejection that you can imagine. I was broke, and 4.5 years in to my 5-year plan, I was living on a friend's sofa because I could not afford to pay rent anywhere. And I had maxed out all of my credit cards, including taking cash advances on them to pay for voice lessons and acting coaches. And it was looking like it was time to pack it in and move back home and give up. And fortunately, just before I did, I was given the opportunity to audition for Phantom by my wonderful late agent. You mentioned his name, Michael Hardig. God bless him. He got me in the door. It was not easy to even get an audition in those days. So it was a huge break simply to get the opportunity to audition for the role.
And then that audition didn't go quite as planned.
No, it didn't. I was so terrified and intimidated by the fact that I was standing on a Broadway stage, that, like we've talked about, those old voices. I'm not good enough to be here. I don't belong here. That all walked in the door with me, and I ended up being slightly stiff and frozen and kind of deer in the headlights, not performing the way that a professional on Broadway needs to perform. So I did not get the part after that first audition, but I did get a role in the ensemble on the national tour. So it was not the starring role on Broadway. It was sort of several rungs down the Phantom ladder. But I was thrilled to finally have a job and be a working actress earning a paycheck. So I did that for an entire year. I was on the tour for a year in the ensemble.
And then I love it. I think it took place after your second interview, but you went back and looked at a journal afterwards and gained some perspective at how far you'd come, because we often completely lose perspective. Those voices, I call it the screw-up gene inside of myself. It can be other things for other people, but our wiring gets the best of us and we completely forget how far we've come.
Yes. I did go back after that year in the ensemble. I was invited to audition a second time, and I blew it again. I tripped over my own 2 feet. I was determined not to be stiff and frozen. So instead, I was over the top and pushy. It just like overperforming, overworking.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found out that I didn't get it again, I really thought, that's it. I blew it and never going to get another shot. I'm a screw up. And I really
Breathing
don't
deep.
measure up. Yep. And yes, again, my dad helped me find that perspective. He reminded me, just a year ago, you were working temp jobs and completely broke, living on your friend's sofa. Now you are traveling the country as a part of this crazy successful show, and don't lose sight of how far you've come.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people that would give anything to be in your shoes, and not to put a guilt trip on myself, but to really shift out of self-pity and into gratitude for how far I had come, and the fact that I'm not a total screw up here. I'm not a failure. I've done pretty darn well. I took the risk of moving to New York, and I'm finally earning money. I'm able to pay my friends back the rent that I owed them from when I was living on their couch. Started paying off my student loans, and that really did help me to surrender it and let go of feeling like a victim, and sitting with that grief of, I didn't get it, I blew it, I'm a total screw up. Shifting into gratitude helped me come out of that mindset.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it's big.
So on that note, you were given some advice by, if I get the name right, Diane Frantantoni.
Oh my gosh, yes, Diane, who played Christine. When I was the understudy, she was Christine. Now her name is Diane Sutherland, I believe is the name she goes by now. But she was Diane Frantantoni back then, and she had done many Broadway shows, and she was so, I think there's a lot of bad press about actresses and competition and it being sort of cutthroat. And I will never forget the kindness that she showed me when I had blown it the second time and I went back into the ensemble. She was this iconic Broadway performer, and I really looked up to her. And she came up to me after the show, and she had heard that I didn't do a good job at my audition. I didn't get the part. And she just put her hands on my shoulders and she said, listen, we all get in our own way sometimes. Even seasoned performers, we all trip over our own 2 feet sometimes, and don't give up. And she said, I was a late bloomer. And that just meant so much to me, that she would take the time to be compassionate and kind to me in that moment. And I've tried to remember that so that I can pay that forward, when someone else is beating up on themselves. And, to recognize there is, as we were talking about off the air, there's value in the valleys. We have a lot to learn from those low times in our lives, or when we do make a mistake. We can sit with that and recognize, okay, there's something for me to learn from this. Mm-hmm. And it's not the end of the world. And it doesn't mean I'm a total loser. To learn to show some self-compassion. And then we can mine for gold from those experiences. Say, what is this here to teach me?
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So, moving forward from that, not too forward, only a few weeks later, what was one last chance?
Yes. My agent, Michael, he called me and said they still haven't found a new Christine, and they want to give you one more shot. They saw something in you. They can tell you're getting in your own way. And the supervisors did a work session with me before that third audition. Mm-hmm. And they said, basically, they told me to stop putting on a show and simply be, to show up. And they said, these Christine-like dresses you're wearing. Don't even wear that. Don't even try to wear, a Christine-y dress. Wear what you're wearing now. And I was in, black pants and a black sweater. I just was being myself. It was clear they were inviting me to bring more Sandra into the room. So the third audition, because I had gone through that valley and gotten to that place of gratitude and surrender, I was able to walk into the third audition with less of a sense of grasping and clinging and desperation. And I tried to let go of all thoughts of proving myself or doing it the way I thought I should, or what do they want me to be, just to drop all of that and bring my own genuine heart to the moment and sing that song from the most honest, present place within me. And the scene came alive. I remember the electricity in the scene that I read with my scene partner at that third audition. And I often talk about Tibetan. In Tibetan, they have a word, wangtang, that means authentic presence. And it literally translates to field of power. And Chogyam Trungpa, the Tibetan teacher, said that the way to bring about authentic presence is by emptying out and letting go. He wrote, you have to be without clinging. And I think that sense of surrender made a huge difference. I liken it to what we often talk about as athletes or performers, musicians, that flow state. You can't access that if you're walking in either apologizing and feeling like this is too big for me, I'm not good enough, or if you're in the mindset of I'm going to prove myself, I'm going to nail it, I'm going to show them. All that stuff just gets in the way of presence and flow. You have to be in that state of relaxed focus that isn't trying to control the outcome, that is really surrendered to, I'm right here, right now, and whatever happens, I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna dance with it. So that made all the difference, and that's when I finally got that phone call I'd been dreaming of. It said, "Congratulations, you got the part."
What's fascinating, and that is a huge woohoo! What's fascinating is it sounds like at the beginning the singing went well, but not on top of your game. But then actually being vulnerable, opening your heart, being a little bit shaky, being who you truly are, actually was huge.
That's right. That's right. Trusting that vulnerability and not trying to mask it, this is what we do. I think it's one of the reasons that Phantom has become this iconic universal phenomenon. I think we can all relate to what it is to wear a mask, to feel like there's something about me that's not good enough. So I need to try to put on some kind of persona or show up in a certain way that will make me somehow better than I am. But what we're always looking for in each other is that ring of truth, that honesty that says, oh, I see you. And in your eyes and your vulnerability, I see myself. I see what is raw and naked and real. That's what we're all looking for. That to me is the birthplace of connection. Whether you're an actress playing a part in a show, the audience is still looking for what is real and raw and true, or whether you're just in relationship. When it's so beautiful when you touch down into something real in a conversation, and it can happen so quickly. It happened for us, the two of us, in our first moments of conversation. You just see the truth in the eyes of another person without trying to cover up some part of yourself. And it gives you permission. When you see that in someone else, it gives you permission to show up more fully.
It's fascinating. Thank you so much for that. It's fascinating. I hadn't planned on going in this topic. I took copious notes, but I didn't take any notes on this at all. But what you're talking about is, it seems a theme. I love watching themes come through multiple shows or multiple vehicles that the universe brings these things forward. Congruence and heart math and being in coherence.
Yes. Oh, I love heart math. And that is something that I've been practicing and working with for a long time. The heart rate variability and coherence. I think it serves performers and it serves us just in life. And yeah, getting in sync and in alignment too. Yeah.
It's so fascinating that you said heart rate variability before the show. And I really want to know what your ritual was before you start. I have my ritual I go through. I've been hemming and hawing on this geek out fitness watch for weeks that I told people I was going to get. And then I dragged my feet. And right before the show, I'm going, you have no business being on Amazon. I'm like, I'm doing my routine, but it's on the page. Click, boom, bought it. I bought this Garmin watch that the reason that I bought it is because it measures heart rate variability.
Awesome. That's so cool. Well, when I read the research that HeartMath has done about what happened, all of the incredible benefits, and I've read several of their books, but also their articles online, what happens when we reach that state of coherence and heart rate variability. And I can't explain to you the science between what's happening in your brain and your heart, but I do recognize the basics that, we're in this electromagnetic field. We are these energetic beings. Mm-hmm. Our heart rate is putting out this rhythm. And the research to me was so compelling, especially about intuition. Mm-hmm. and flow state. We've just been talking about flow state, and one of the things that I do, one of my rituals, is to really focus on getting myself to self-generate positive emotion before any important performance, before I'm going into any situation that might make me feel intimidated, or where I just want to be at my best, to get in a state of heart rate coherence, that heart rate coherent state that HeartMath teaches you. And it's super simple to do. You can simply and should we do it right now?
Absolutely.
Let's do a quick tapping into the heart rate right now. So it's super simple. You can simply close your eyes and imagine your breath is coming in and out from your heart. Just really think about the area, bring your attention to the area of your heart, right there in the center of your chest. And as you breathe, almost as if you have nostrils right there at your heart center, imagine the breath is coming in and out. So you're just bringing attention and awareness. Where attention goes, energy flows. So taking a few deep breaths and maybe inhaling and exhaling a little more slowly, a longer, slower inhalation and exhalation. Just slightly longer than you might naturally breathe. And now the third step is just bringing to mind something you feel grateful for. Might be a person, situation, the beauty of the day. And let that sense of gratitude really fill up your heart as you breathe. And whenever you're ready to just open your eyes and continue keeping a background awareness of your heart being lit up with gratitude.
Woohoo!
So that's simple, quick, and easy practice of bringing a sense of gratitude to your heart. The research shows that positive emotion plus nervousness or fear equals improved performance versus negative emotion plus nervousness or fear, which equals tripping over your own 2 feet. That's when you get in your own way. So bringing a sense of positive energy, a sense of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
can actually improve performance. And the heart math techniques, and I for years have meditated with, they have the little ear clip thing that measures your heart rate variability.
Yeah.
So I train with that. There's a little app on your phone called Inner Balance. And by the way, I have used this stuff for years before I ever knew the people involved in heart math. I have since met them and been able to thank them and even got to visit heart math, but I am not affiliated with them in any way. There's no kickback going on here or anything like that. This is just something that has worked for me, and that there are health benefits to it. I just think and for me, like you with your watch, it's sometimes having that external feedback
Mm-hmm.
is motivating. Like that helps me feel good about meditation. Like, oh, look, it gives you points for how long you spend in your heart rate coherence. So that sense of competition with yourself, I think, is incredibly motivating too.
Yeah, and I love having a metric, knowing how
Yeah,
I'm doing, because it's sort of like going to the gym. If you never knew how much weight you're lifting, how do you know where to go and if you've improved?
that's right. Yeah, it makes it a game. It makes it fun.
So talking about standing in our field of power, and that's really a big theme of what we're talking about today. How do we know when we've stepped out of our field of power?
That's a great question. So I think one of the things that we can all look at is to begin to practice a bit of dual awareness. Your listeners are probably familiar with that witnessing presence, witnessing consciousness. So I can also be recognizing, oh, this is me when I'm being just me. I'm not trying to put on any persona or show. And we can also look at when we have a sense that we've stepped past it. Like I am feeling a little bit off center right now. And one of the ways I think is really useful is to sort of take a scan of your life. Can you identify a time when you played small, or as a casting director once explained it to me, she said it's like sometimes people walk in apologizing. Can you sense if there's a background um, smallness that is showing up for you somehow, or a background in the opposite direction? If there's a sense of when have you been pushing or overworking, trying to prove yourself? Can you identify a time when that was true? And then can you identify a time when you felt like you were really in the zone, like you were showing up fully and bringing the essence of who you are to an interaction? So just cultivating that awareness can help you recognize when you're in your field of power versus when you've stepped outside of it.
Beautiful. I'm thinking of myself on the mic daily, and I'm thinking of presence, and the number of shows that you did day after day, year after year. I consider this a meditation. I'm repeating a mantra, actually, sending love as I'm going through this with you. And I'm picturing you on stage, and you talk about this a bit, about how you could be in the middle of singing a song, and if you're not careful, you could all of a sudden end up in your to-do list.
Sure.
How do you keep yourself present? Because that's a lot of what we're talking about, is bringing it back to ourselves.
Yes, it is a challenge for sure to do the same show night after night and sing the same songs over and over again, 6 nights a week for a decade. And there were plenty of times when I would be in the middle of a song and I suddenly recognize, whoa, I am not here. I'm thinking about what I'm going to have to eat after the show. So that redirecting
Mm-hmm.
of, first of all, just like we do in meditation, right? Coming back. It's a continual coming back. And I love the metaphor that Pema Chodron uses of the puppy, like training a puppy. You want to teach the puppy to stay,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to run off. It's in its nature. It's following its instinct. So without judgment, to gently and kindly bring it back. So that's what you do on stage in all of those moments, is to keep coming back, keep coming back. And it's a wonderful practice for life. How often are we talking to someone, but our mind is somewhere else? We're not really listening. We're not really present. Or we could be sitting under the trees and enjoying a beautiful day, but we're not seeing any of it because we're off in our head about future or past. So practicing presence in an ongoing moment to moment way, and mindfulness, really, it helps on stage, and it certainly helps in life. And it's ongoing. I think we never arrive. It's a continual bringing that puppy back.
Speaking of bringing the puppy back and ongoing, and also going to what we were talking earlier, kind of a bit on deliberate practice and putting yourself out on the edge, you did switch careers. You made, in my opinion, a giant leap. First off, how did you know when it was time to end, and how did you know what to begin next?
Thank you. Yes, I did. In the latter years, when I was in Phantom, I knew that I wanted to move on to something else. Like the aliveness of that particular path had gone out for me. And I knew there was some other direction I wanted to go in. I just didn't have the passion to continue pursuing other Broadway shows, even though that was what I had known my whole life. It's what I trained for. It's what I loved. But I just couldn't ignore that feeling, that sense that this wasn't it for me anymore. And I just had a desire to wrap it up in a beautiful bow with vows of gratitude and move on. But I had no idea what I was moving toward for a really long time. That's not completely true. I got one of those downloads that we sometimes get. The same feeling I had when I saw Annie.
Yeah.
I had it again when I attended a conference in New York called Living a Fearless Life. It was put on by the Omega Institute. And I went to this conference really searching, knowing that there was something more for me to do after Phantom, but had no idea what that would be. But I saw Carolyn Mace speak all day on Friday, and she talked about getting a download and that fear can keep us from hearing it and all these things. And I was thinking, I'm not getting any darn downloads. And I have been meditating and praying and journaling and asking for help, guidance, nothing was coming. But that night, and I believe it was 2004, that night my head hit the pillow and I saw myself in my mind's eye on stage speaking to an audience and singing, but not wearing a costume and not part of a show. Just sharing my own experience with fear and moving through it. And it was so clear. And it was like the script was being written in my head. I knew exactly what I wanted to share, and I could see how it might help people. Now, in that vision, I thought I was speaking to high school students who wanted to pursue the arts, who dealt with, the same inner voices of I'm not good enough that I had struggled with. And I felt clear that was what I wanted to do, but I had no idea how to do it. I didn't leave Phantom for 2 more years, and it took me a long time to find my way into what is now a speaking career. But this is how I think it works. We get some inkling, we get some kind of sense of this is what I want to pursue. And then we start following paths and we run into a brick wall, which is what happened. I tried to I did my first speaking engagement to a high school audience in Michigan, back in my hometown. And I had it videotaped and I put a demo together and I thought, this is it. I'm on my way. I'm going to get an agent who's going to book me to speak to high schools around the country. And that's what I'm going to do. I reached out to a speakers bureau in Michigan, my hometown, that dealt with high schools, and they rejected me, flat out rejected me. I had been on Broadway for 10 years. I thought I had a story that could really inspire and motivate young people, and they wanted no part of me. And I was crushed. I remember thinking, well, I guess I got it all wrong. This was not meant to be. This was not the path. That download I thought I had was clearly a mistake. But as it turns out, I remember when I was on the Oprah show back in 2006, Oprah's wonderful line of God can dream a bigger dream for you than you can dream for yourself.
Oh, man.
I could not have imagined that people in the business world and in the world of finance, financial services, and women's conferences, all these different audiences would be really interested in what I had to share. High schools, for whatever reason, that was not the path. But what has opened up has enriched my life in ways I never saw coming. So, yeah, again, I think just following that intuitive guidance, it may take longer than you think, but it eventually leads you to where you can do the most good.
How scary was it for you the first time on stage doing this new presentation?
Oh my gosh. The first time for that high school, I was shaken like a leaf. I was up half the night before with a friend of mine who's a director and a coach, and he was helping me write this speech and rehearse it, and what are my key points I'm making, and how do I do that? I mean, it was so scary to get out there by myself without a script that someone else wrote. Thank God I had those phantom songs that were tried and true that I knew I was going to perform, and which I still do perform those songs every time I give a keynote. But that first time, oh man, it was so scary. It was so vulnerable to step out as myself. And who do I think I am? The same old voices. What do I have to say that, what makes me think I can share something that's going to be valuable to someone else? All that stuff came up again.
You had a very, you had a very rough year. I believe it was 2007. And one of those experiences was a tumor that could have taken away your voice.
Yes. Yeah, the year after I left Phantom, 2007, was quite a year. I had left behind this role that I had played for 10 years, left behind my whole Broadway career, no idea what I was going to do to earn a living. Mm-hmm. My dad, who had been my anchor, my person, he died suddenly, had a heart attack and passed. And I found out that I had a tumor pressing against the nerve that controls the motor function of my tongue. So it was a brain stem tumor, very rare, in a very precarious location. As it turned out, the tumor was not cancerous and did not need to be treated. They decided to just watch and wait. And mercifully, it has not grown in that time. But if they had treated it, and there was a period of time there where they were considering that with radiation, it would have destroyed my ability to sing. It would have left me with a speech impediment. And the leading voice expert and doctor who does surgery on people like Adele, famous singers, I went and saw him in Boston, Dr. Zeitels, and he was very clear that I would never sing again if they had to treat this tumor. So it really was one of those periods of my life where it felt like everything was stripped away and everything was on the table. It really got my attention in a big way. And anyone who's lost someone suddenly or faced a scary diagnosis can relate to that sense of, wow, you really get clear on limited time, on the impermanence of what we're all doing here, and that the fact that it could all be taken away at any given moment. And for me, that was it redefined my relationship to everything and how I wanted to inhabit whatever time I had left. I was very clear that it was not about climbing ladders anymore or racing on some treadmill of achievement that in some way I felt like I had been on, of get to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I really felt like the new commitment after that was simply to be as present as possible, as often as possible, and to really focus on what matters most. That's what the book grew out of, was getting clear on what really matters. What really matters. And I think, one of the gifts of getting older, I'm excited to be turning 50 this year.
No
One of the great
way.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. And maybe part of that is that I'm not acting anymore. If I were still trying to be an actress, then now I think I'd have to be a lot more stressed about looking a certain way or not aging. And I don't care about any of that. It's such a gift to get older. And one of the great blessings of it is I do think we spend our young life on the journey upward, sometimes climbing higher and higher, seeing how far we can go. And at this point in life, there's a deepening that occurs, and the journey inward really gets to take center stage. And it's the most enriching, life-giving time. And so, again, as we talked about, there's value in those valleys. The experience of 2007 really shifted the way that I relate to everything in my life.
Thank you for sharing so much in that. It brings up, we'll start to wind things down. I'm so excited. I could keep going with this interview. Thank you. Anyway,
Thank you.
the importance of love and acceptance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and beginning with ourselves. I remember so vividly my favorite moment to play in Phantom, when this is the moment that broke the audience's hearts wide open every single night. In that final scene, when Christine, my character, is finally able to see the Phantom without his mask and feel such love and compassion for him. It's the transformational moment in the show when I used to hold his face in my hands and look into his eyes, and here he is in his unmasked, most vulnerable, raw state. And I would just see him with such love and imagine all the love of the universe pouring through me and into him. And it was such a sacred moment. I could feel that the gift that is when we're seen for all of who we are and we're shown love. It is transformational for all of us. And yet it was not lost on me that I would go home, having played that sacred, beautiful scene, offering that love and acceptance to another. But I would go home and be very hateful toward myself for years. All that time, really. Here I was at the pinnacle of my career success, but I couldn't feel it. I couldn't own it. I felt still the voices of I'm not enough. Still the voices
Imposter
of
syndrome.
Yes, it just morphed. Those old voices just morphed into imposter syndrome. Any day now, someone's going to figure out that I'm just a kid from Detroit who's really insecure on the inside, and I don't really belong on this Broadway stage. I know it's my name on the door, and I've been playing the role for 10 years, longer than anybody. I was a record breaker at that point too. Phantom's longest running female star, blah, blah. But I couldn't own it. I couldn't feel that sense of enoughness until after that tumor diagnosis and the loss of my dad, who had been the person in my life who saw me without my mask and believed in me and loved me for all of my flaws and all of the mess that I felt like on the inside. And I remember having a very specific moment in the wake of that tumor diagnosis and recognizing I may never sing again. I may never be able to do that thing that I thought made me, gave me value. If that's gone, if everything is taken away, what's left?
Yeah.
And I had a moment of really recognizing, you know what, if I never achieve another thing, if I never arrive at some place that's I think is out there in the future, can I accept the being that's here? Can I accept and love this flawed human being that is still here? And it really felt like a resounding yes, and a resounding sense of dropping the rope that I had always felt like there was this tug of war going on between who I thought I should be, that was always somewhere off in the distance, versus just the plain old person that's here. And I think it was breaking what Tara Brach calls the trance of unworthiness. The trance of unworthiness. That, I think, is what causes so much unnecessary suffering, that we cover up some part of ourselves with that mask, feeling like we're somehow fundamentally broken and in need of fixing. And recognizing that that's a lie. That's just not true. That the being that's here is sacred and whole and worthy of love.
Woohoo! Speaking of worthy of love, I can't resist going here. There may have been one phantom who didn't get away.
Oh, yes. In Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center, the show got a new phantom. I had been playing Christine for 2 years at that point, and a new actor came in to play the role of the phantom. His name was Ron Bomer, and he and I had really great chemistry on stage and off stage, and we fell in love in real life, and I married the phantom. We've been married for 15 years now.
So I've got to ask, was it love at first sight?
Oh, no. He might answer differently, but to me it really was a slow, deep friendship that developed, and just a real recognition of, this is someone that I can really bring all of myself. I can be all of myself with. And he felt that the same, that he could really be completely who he was with me. And we got closer and closer over time, and we're happier today than we were in the beginning.
Woo!
So grateful for that.
I don't want people to leave listening to, I'm going to call this is just a brilliant interview. Thank you so much. I don't want people leaving today without a homework assignment, so that they're not just going to listen to this, but they're going to have an assignment that you're going to give them. I'm giving my coaching hat to you today. What would you give them to help begin to unmask themselves and their lives?
That's a beautiful assignment. I love it. Thank you. I want to think of, like, what is the most fundamental practice that can put you in touch with that. And I mean, it really does all come down, I think, to the fundamental of self-love and self-worth. Because from that place of recognizing our own enoughness, that's where we begin to develop the courage to bring what is inside of us out into the world. So, and I do think we all need to find a personal practice that helps us return to a sense of our own belonging on the earth. Like when you really go through the bottom of it, of what's underneath this trance of unworthiness, I think there's a sense that we don't belong here, that we have to somehow prove our worth or earn our right to be here. And we try to do that through achievement, through all sorts of external things that we put on. And really, it's an unmasking, it's a dropping, a falling away of all of that, and recognizing how much we do really belong on the earth. And we've been born, we've been gifted this life. So now how can we play the role we've been cast in full out? So one of the foundational practices that I think is crucial is loving kindness meditation. That to me helps me to feel my own connection to other people and to the planet and to all of life. It helps me cultivate a sense of belonging here. And it also, a huge important part of the practice is to include oneself in those intentions of sending loving kindness towards yourself as well. So that's something that I practice in an ongoing way, and I find it incredibly helpful. And even if you do it for a minute, 1 minute of it all helps.
So what I'd like to do, I'd like to ask a few quick wrap-up questions and then dive into a brief meditation. If I did the meditation first, I'm going to be mush after.
Okay.
So first off, Jessica, my wife, she's the producer of the show. She always wants me to ask a question for parents and their kids. What advice would you give parents to help their kids today?
Well, I love looking back at what my own parents did right. And of course, they were not perfect, no such thing. So they made plenty of mistakes. But one thing that they did right was they listened to my heart and they encouraged me to follow that despite all the logical, rational reasons why it didn't make any sense. They looked deeply into my heart and they encouraged me to follow the thing that lit me up. And they didn't push me. They didn't make demands, but they simply encouraged that blossoming of the thing that wanted to express as me. I think sometimes it's easy to have expectations of what we think our kids should be or our vision for them, but really encouraging them to listen to their own inner guidance and see what lights them up and love them through the expression of that.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
So where can people go to find out more and to find your beautiful book?
Oh, thank you. I'm easy to find. I'm at sandrajoseph.com, SandraJoseph.com.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And the most important question of them all, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Oh, goodness. I think there's so many things, but being on the other side of those OSMs, that's a big woohoo moment. And I'm experiencing it right now, having put this book out, which was a very vulnerable, naked thing to do, as anyone who's written a book that has personal life stuff in it understands. I was really terrified to step into that, and putting the book out and just having returned from being back in New York celebrating Phantom's 30th anniversary, I'm really feeling a sense of woohoo about having faced those OSMs and the empowerment that comes when we trust that we can do it, even when we're afraid.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's so important to know that there is a benefit in facing the OSMs, because if you run the other way, you regret it your whole life. It comes back. You said it best. You die a little bit inside each time.
That's right. And Mark Nepo, I know you've interviewed Mark Nepo, and he's been my primary teacher and mentor. And he talks about, there's a cost to being seen, but there's also a cost to being invisible. So I think making the choice, and Brene Brown says you can have comfort or you can have courage, but you cannot have both. So we all have to decide for ourselves, which cost do you choose? and based on your values, how do you want to show up in your life? And I think our inner voice always guides us. The voice of love that's inside of all of us guides us to where we're meant to, as you said in the beginning, to shine.
Beautiful. So on that note, before we do a brief meta-kindness meditation, any last words of wisdom you want to share?
I want to leave with a quote from Mark Nepo that opens my book.
Yeah.
Because I think this is such a relevant message for all of us. People have listened to my story, and I had this career on Broadway and whatever, and we're all on our own journeys where you can look back at your life and maybe you feel like, well, I didn't do the thing I really wanted to do, or now I'm in these roles that no longer fit me and I'm wanting this new expression. We're always continuing to evolve and blossom, and today is the start. Right now can be the beginning of whatever little spark you're feeling inside. So Mark Nepo, this quote from one of his poems that opens my book, he says, "We never know when we will blossom into what we're supposed to be. It might be early, it might be late. It might be after 30 years of failing at a misguided way, or the very first time we dare to shed our mental skin and touch the world."
Woohoo! Thank you so, so much. And thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yes, yes.
So
Thank you, Mark.
would you mind leading us in a guided meditation then?
Yes. So a loving kindness practice, you can change up the language any way you'd like, but I'm going to share with you the one that I practice most often. And we'll just keep it super simple.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with someone else. You can think about someone that you love and send these wishes to them. And then we're going to include ourselves in these wishes as well. So I invite you to close your eyes. And again, maybe bringing your attention into your heart center, breathing in and out from that space. I call it a heart warm up. We warm up the body, warm up the voice to perform, but it's also important to warm up your heart. So bringing that sense of gratitude and light to your heart center. And then I invite you to bring to mind someone you love. It doesn't have to be a perfect relationship, but someone you really feel a sense of warm-heartedness toward. Someone whose well-being you really care about. Just bring them really close in right now. And we're going to send them 4 wishes in this loving kindness practice. And we'll start with a wish for them to be peaceful. So just repeating in your own mind as you think about this person, may you be peaceful and happy. May you be peaceful and happy. And picturing them. Picture the light from your heart connecting with the light in their heart. Just wishing them well. May you be peaceful and happy. And next, may you be healthy and filled with vitality. Picture them healthy and filled with vitality. May you be safe and free from harm, both internal and external. May you be safe from internal and external harm. And the 4th, may you live with joy and ease. May you live with joy and ease. And now we're going to turn those 4 phrases toward ourselves, which can be a little more challenging sometimes. That's why we warm up the heart by thinking of someone that we love. Now I'm going to invite you to wish for yourself. May I be peaceful and happy. May I be peaceful and happy. May I be healthy and filled with vitality. May I be safe from internal and external harm. And may I live with ease and joy. And one final round. Let's expand this one out to include ourselves, the people we love, and all beings. Just really zoom out to include all beings. May we be peaceful and happy. May we be healthy, filled with vitality. May we be safe from internal and external harm. May we live with ease and joy. And when you're ready, bringing yourself back to this moment, back into your body. And gradually, as you feel ready, open your eyes.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Sandra, this has been phenomenal.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's really been a gift to be here with you.
Pleasure is all mine. I love your book. Everybody, go on out, get Unmasking What Matters. In fact, get a bunch of them, give them as gifts. It is such a beautiful, beautiful book. You outdid yourself. You put yourself out there. It took 10 years, but it is so beautiful indeed.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you. And thank you for all that you're doing in the world and how you're using your life. It's beautiful.
Thank you so, so much. Got to crank it back up for the finish here. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get unmasking what matters, and begin shedding your mask today and shine bright. Woohoo! Woohoo! Awesome. Thank you so, so much, Sandra.
Thank you. What a joy, really. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!